Hey guys, welcome back, thanks for tuning in. Many of you requested me to do a video about the drawing materials that I use, those here. And I think it's because the market can be very overwhelming. There are so many products to choose from, and especially when you start drawing, it's hard to find a start. So I'm talking about what I use and what works for me, and maybe a little bit about how I use the stuff that I use. And I think we shouldn't talk much right now, so let's jump right in. And to begin with, need a place to draw. I use my desk, but over time, as you can see here, there are scratches, and to prevent those, you can buy cardboard in any art supply shop, and it costs nothing. And if you want to cut something on it, you can. If you want to glue something on it, you can. And if it's dirty, you can buy a new one, so pretty handy. So if you want to start drawing now, you need a pencil, and a normal one like this normally does the job. You can get them as soft pencil or hard pencil, depending on what you like and what you draw with. And I like to have crisp and clean lines. So the problem with a soft pencil like this is when you draw some lines, they get thicker over time. And with thick lines, you can't work precisely on contours. So you see, there's a difference between the first and the last stroke, and I don't want the thick one. So most of the times, I'm using a technical pencil. This one is from Rotring. It's a 05. I think there are some different sizes as well, but I bought this one with some other Rotring pens I will show you later, and this one keeps me going pretty good. And of course you don't have to use Rotring. It's a German brand, it's pretty expensive but pretty reliable as well. I don't want to advertise them because you can use literally every other pen that you can put a mine into. As you can see here, those lines stay pretty consistent and don't get as thick as the ones from the normal pencil. If we compare the first and the last stroke, there's not much of a difference, and that's the look I'm trying to achieve. But there's one important thing to say about those pens. If you use a hard mine and press too hard, you may scratch the paper, and then it's difficult to erase the line again. The next tool I'm using to create the drawings is the Micron fine liners. It comes in a 6-pack with 0.5, 0.1, 2, 3 and up till 0.8. The name says it already. The fine liners are for fine lines and not for surfaces and stuff. For surfaces, I'm using the Pigma brush pen, this one. I think they are using the same ink, so the black is very consistent when I use those products on my drawings. And clearly you can see that this nib differs from the one from the fine liners. This one is made of soft felt, I think, and it's perfect to fill bigger areas with black solid color. I don't know why they don't put it in the pack, but there is another one, the 0.03 micron pen. It has a very small nib, and you can achieve really small dots to create intricate designs. This nib is so small, you have to be very careful to not break it when making dot work shading or lines. So I would recommend not doing lines with that with a big pressure. So light dot work, light line work, and you'll have fun with it for a pretty long time. But after a certain time, the inscription of the pen comes off and you don't know which size to use. I'm using a little trick on this. I'm writing the name or the size of the pen on the pen with a permanent marker. Stick some taser tape around it to prevent that it comes off again. So you see, it stays where it is. Because I wrote it on it a couple of times, it doesn't matter how the pen is lying on the table. You can always see the size, and this saves you some time. Right here I'm using normal copy paper, but only for demonstration purposes, because it's not made for the nib for a fine liner. It has a very rough structure and actually is made for pencils and of course printing because it's copy paper, and you will destroy the nib with it. What I'm using is Canson illustration paper. It's a little bit less white than the normal copy paper, but in the end you will even not notice, I think. The problem of normal copy paper is that when you draw with fine liner ink, the ink will bleed out like you see here, and if you get slow, it sucks the ink in and makes a really unstable and crooked line, and I want clean lines in my work, so I'm not going with copy paper at all. Eventually, sometimes for sketches, but most of the time I don't use this. As I said in my last video, a clean line is everything you need, and with a good quality paper you can achieve this look no matter how fast or slow you go. There's no bleeding and the lines are clean, as you see here. As an alternative, you can get Bristol paper in different thicknesses, but I don't like Bristol paper because when you are not aware of your fingers and hand, there is a good chance to smudge your ink because it dries very slow on that paper, in my opinion. You can use mixed media paper, or you can even use aquarelle paper for your fine line drawings. And as you can see here, it's no problem to create black areas with the brush pen and those papers. Another great advantage of good paper and a nice pen with a nice nib is that you can create dots or lines that are very consistent. As you can see here, the dots are the same size and the same roundness. And I don't want to get into detail on drawing techniques and stuff like this, but there's one thing you will be aware of is the drawing angle. If your angle is too narrow, you don't get clean lines, and if it's really too narrow, you barely even get lines. But of course you can use this as your advantage, because when you want to create a shading or subtle thin lines, you can use this technique. If you make a sketch and you make a mistake or you want to change something, highly recommend using a rubber. This one is from Tombow, it's called Dust Catch, and there's a reason why I'm using especially this one. It's because it's very soft, but mainly because it doesn't create a mess on your desk. Even if you apply a little bit pressure on it and make thicker lines, and as I warned you before, it's hard to erase those sometimes, but this eraser does a great job, and this is the only leftover, so definitely a recommendation. But after time it gets very round, and because it's so soft, it's hard to erase small parts. At the beginning you can use the edges, but after sometimes it gets round and you can't work precisely with that anymore. So I introduced you to everything I need to create a sketch and for the black ink, but when you look at my Instagram, you can see that I sometimes draw with white, and I'd like to introduce the pens I'm using for this as well, of course. So as I told you before, I bought the road rings in a set, and the pencil was one part of it, and those isographs are the other ones, and they came in 3 sizes, or actually there are many more sizes, but I ordered a pack with 01, 03 and 05. These pens are working very different than the fine liners I just showed you, because they have a cartridge in it, and you can fill this cartridge with colored ink, with white ink, black ink. You can buy the ink in those plastic bottles. It's from Rotring. In German it's called Zeichentusche, and you can buy them on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description for my Amazon shop. You can buy all the stuff I'm using and I showed you today there. One important thing is that you have to be aware of is shake this thing properly. But there's one reason why they are so expensive, because they don't have a nib with structured cloth or something like this. They have a metal nib, and there's a little needle inside. When you draw and you put this needle down, the ink comes out, and you can use this forever, this nib, when you are gentle to it, of course. And I just love using them with black paper and white ink, and I don't want to talk much now, just enjoy and look what those pens can do. Sometimes those pens dry out very fast and don't draw anymore, but I can show you some workarounds in another video. What I really don't want to miss is the ruler. It doesn't have to be one like this, but it has to be straight. Probably you want to have those lines, orientation lines and angle lines and stuff like this for symmetry and stuff, but I need this all the time. There's no drawing I don't use a ruler. The last tool I'm showing you today is the compass. It's from Staedtler, and this one has some quick adjusting knobs. But the most important thing of this one is that it has an adapter where you can mount your pencils in, or fine liners, or whatever you like. Maybe you're wondering why I glued one side of the compass together, but if you press too hard, it can happen that joint bends, like here, and your circle gets destroyed. So I glued them together and no problems anymore. Some people think that it's a disadvantage to have the holes from this needle in the paper, but I don't mind, because sometimes it's a good orientation point to have the center of the circle. And as an alternative to the compass, you can use a pattern like this, especially for the small ones, because the small circles are very hard to do with a compass. Yeah, pretty handy as well. And last but not least, washi tape. It's not as strong as normal duct tape or teaser tape, so it doesn't destroy your paper when it comes off.
I most of the time use it to fixate my paper when I make videos. And yeah, that's all. So thanks for watching, hope you like what you saw. If you have any questions or requests, just comment them in the section below, and hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.